The night sky burned with falling fire. A human soldier named Jack had survived the crash of his ship. He was tired, his body hurt, but his spirit was strong. He stood up among the smoking ruins and looked around the strange new world. The land was rocky and sharp, with strange pipes and glowing lanterns fixed to cliffs. Waterfalls cut through the stone like silver snakes. The air was heavy with mist, and the sound of drums echoed far away. Jack held his backpack tight, his only piece of working tech. Inside were tools, weapons, and the last spark of his destroyed ship. He had no idea where he was or if he was alone, but deep inside, he knew one thing: he was not welcome here. Soon, Jack saw movement. Tiny shadows ran between the pipes and stone bridges. At first, he thought they were children, but when they stepped into the light, he froze. They were aliens, small in height, with blue skin that glowed under the lantern light. Their eyes were large and bright, and their ears sharp like blades. They looked fragile, yet there was something ancient in their gaze. One of them pointed at Jack and shouted words he could not understand. Others stepped back in fear. Some even dropped the baskets they were carrying. Jack lifted his hands to show he meant no harm. "I am not your enemy," he said softly, though he knew they could not understand. But before he could step closer, a roar broke the silence. From the shadows of the cliffs came another group. These were raiders, larger, cruel, and covered in armor made of bones and metal. They carried blades and spears, and their eyes burned red like fire. They ran toward the small blue aliens, laughing as they came. The tribe screamed and tried to hide, but they were too weak, too small. The raiders began pushing them, stealing food, and striking anyone who resisted. Jack felt his blood boil. He could not watch this happen. Even though he was a stranger, even though he was lost, he was still human, and humans did not turn away from the helpless. He pulled out a shock baton from his pack, the last working weapon he had. Its light sparked blue as he held it tight. The raiders noticed him. At first they laughed. To them, he looked like another weak outsider. But Jack's eyes told a different story. When the first raider charged, Jack moved fast. He struck the baton across the raider's chest, sending sparks through his armor. The alien fell back screaming, and the others stopped laughing. Now the fight began. Jack swung his baton, dodging heavy strikes. The raiders were bigger, but he was faster. He kicked one into a wall, slammed another to the ground. The blue aliens watched with wide eyes, their fear turning into shock. They had never seen anyone fight for them. One by one, the raiders began to fall. Some ran away, dragging their wounded, cursing the human's name. When the fight ended, Jack stood alone. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His arms were bruised. His face had cuts. But he was alive. Around him, the tiny blue aliens stepped forward slowly. They looked at him with awe, whispering words he could not understand. To them, he was not just a stranger anymore, he was something more. Then the crowd parted. From the shadows came a taller alien, still small compared to Jack, but clearly their leader. His skin was darker. His armor was decorated with glowing stones. He carried a staff that hummed with energy. The tribe bowed as he approached. Jack realized this was their chief. The chief studied him for a long time. His eyes were sharp, his face unreadable. Finally, he spoke in a language mixed with words Jack almost understood. "You fight for us," the chief said slowly, "but why?" Jack shook his head. "I do not know your ways," he answered, "but I will not watch bullies hurt the weak." The chief's eyes narrowed. He looked at his people, then back at Jack. A slow smile spread across his face. "Then perhaps," he said, "you are meant to be more than a stranger." The blue aliens gasped, whispering among themselves. Jack felt a strange chill run through him. He did not know what the chief meant, but deep inside he knew this was only the beginning. The drums began again, louder this time. The tribe circled him, chanting words in unison. The chief raised his staff and the lanterns burned brighter. Jack felt as if the world itself was watching him. And though he had just arrived, though he was lost and broken, he had become part of something far greater, something that would soon change his life forever. The night had grown quiet after the humans' first fight. The blue-skinned tribe still whispered his name in awe, though they had never heard such sounds before. They called him the Tall Guardian, a giant who had come from the sky. But Jack knew peace never lasted. He felt it in his bones. He had seen that look in the raiders' eyes. They would return, and next time, they would bring more. The chief led Jack through winding stone bridges and into the heart of the village. Strange lanterns glowed with steady light, hanging from thick pipes that twisted like vines. The people lived inside caves carved into the cliffs, their doors lit with fireflies trapped in glass everywhere Jack went. Small heads peeked out, staring at him with wide glowing eyes. Some bowed, others hid, and children clung to their mother's legs. To them, he was both a hero and a monster. But Jack walked calmly, keeping his hands low. He wanted them to see he was not a danger. The chief finally stopped in front of a platform of stone. He raised his staff and the crowd gathered, filling the bridges above and below. He pointed to Jack and spoke in their tongue. Though Jack could not understand every word, he caught pieces. Protector, outsider, strong blood. The tribe cheered, though many still looked unsure. Jack stood there silently, wondering what this meant for him. He had defended them once, but could he defend them again against an army? Later that night, Jack sat alone near the fire. He checked his backpack, counting what little gear he had left. 1 shock baton, half a power cell, a survival knife, and a few rations. Not much to fight an army. His thoughts were broken when a small shadow crept closer. It was a young alien child carrying a bowl of glowing fruit. The child placed it before him and whispered, "Thank you, Guardian." Before running away, Jack stared at the gift, his heart heavy. These people were placing hope in him, hope he wasn't sure he could carry. Then the warning horns blew. The sound shook the cliffs, echoing through every cave. The raiders had returned sooner than expected. Their war cries thundered in the night, and fire lit the sky. The tribe panicked, rushing to hide, but the chief stepped forward with his staff raised high. He pointed at Jack, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Guardian, fight!" The tribe's eyes turned to him, desperate and afraid. Jack rose to his feet, gripping his baton, his heart steady. He knew this moment was coming, and he would not run. The raiders stormed into the village, larger in number, stronger than before. Their armor clanked, their blades gleamed, and their cruel laughter filled the air. They did not fear the small tribe, but then they saw Jack standing tall in the firelight. The laughter died, replaced with snarls of hate. One raider shouted, pointing at him, "Kill the outsider!" They rushed him. Jack swung his baton, sparks flying as he struck the first raider down. The weapon hummed with power, its glow burning against the night. Another raider leapt at him with a spear, but Jack caught it and snapped it across his knee. He slammed the broken end into the raider's chest, sending him crashing to the ground. The tribe watched in silence, their fear slowly turning into hope. They had never seen a single warrior fight like this. Jack moved like a storm, fast and merciless. He dodged, struck, and roared, his human strength shaking the battlefield. Still, the raiders were many. They swarmed him from every side, their blades cutting close. One sliced his arm, another bruised his ribs, but Jack refused to fall. He fought harder, each strike fueled by the memory of Earth, of battles long past. He was not only fighting for survival, he was fighting to prove that humans did not abandon the weak. Suddenly the chief joined the fight, his staff glowing with strange energy. He struck the ground, sending waves of force that knocked raiders off their feet. The tribe found courage, and hurled stones and spears from above. It was not much, but it slowed the enemy. Together, the human and the tiny aliens turned the tide. For every blow Jack delivered, the tribe cheered louder. The raiders began to hesitate, their eyes showing fear. The outsider was no weak prey. He was a nightmare they could not control. At last, the raider leader stepped forward, a giant compared. To the others, he wore black armor and carried a double-edged blade. His eyes glowed with fire as he snarled at Jack. "You do not belong here, human." Jack tightened his grip, his chest burning with pain. "Neither do you," he answered. Then the two clashed. The leader swung heavy strikes, each one shaking the ground. Jack blocked, barely keeping his stance. The fight was brutal. Steel against sparks, rage against willpower. The tribe held their breath, watching in silence. Finally, Jack found his opening. He ducked low, drove his baton into the leader's chest, and released all the energy left in his power cell. The shock exploded, throwing the leader back in a shower of sparks. He fell with a scream, his armor smoking. The raiders froze in horror. Without their leader, they broke, retreating into the night. The tribe roared with joy, their voices echoing across the cliffs. Jack fell to one knee, gasping for air, his baton now dead, its power spent. But he had won, at least for tonight. The chief stepped forward, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You are not just guardian," he said slowly, his eyes glowing with respect. "You are family now." The word sent ripples through the tribe. Some cheered, some gasped, but none dared to question. Jack lifted his head, sweat and blood dripping. From his face, family, he thought. It was a word he had not heard in a long time. But in this strange place, among these tiny aliens, it felt real. And though he did not yet know what awaited him, Jack felt destiny closing its hand around him. This was only the beginning of something far greater. The fires of battle had finally burned out. The raiders were gone, their leader defeated, their pride shattered. The small alien tribe gathered around their tall human defender. Their voices rose in song, their drums echoed through the stone cliffs. For the first time in years, the tribe had hope. And for the first time in years, Jack felt like he belonged somewhere. But belonging always came with a price. The chief knew this, and the tribe knew it too. When a savior appeared, tradition demanded a bond that would tie the protector to the people forever. That night, the chief called for a great gathering. Lanterns lit the bridges, the caves glowed with warm light. The tribe stood shoulder to shoulder, their glowing eyes fixed on Jack. He stood at the center, his body aching, his weapon drained, but his heart strong, ready to face whatever came. The chief stepped forward, staff in hand, his voice deep and steady. He spoke in the alien tongue, the words rolling like thunder. Jack could only catch pieces, but he felt the weight in every syllable. The chief spoke of courage, of honor, of blood spilled for the tribe. Then his voice grew sharper, louder, and he raised his staff toward Jack. The tribe gasped, their voices rising in whispers. Something important was about to happen. The chief turned to the crowd, his eyes burning with pride. "Our guardian," he declared, "is no longer an outsider." The tribe cheered, stamping their feet, clapping their hands. Jack smiled, thinking this was the end of the ceremony. But then the chief raised his hand, calling for silence. He turned to Jack, his face unreadable. "And now," he said slowly, "he must be bound." The words froze Jack in place. Bound? He didn't like the sound of it. He looked around as the tribe parted, making way for a figure walking forward. It was a girl, small like the others, her skin glowing brighter than the lanterns. Her hair was silver, falling over her shoulders like a river of light. Her steps were calm, but her hands trembled as she held a woven crown of leaves. She stopped before Jack and looked up at him with wide, shining eyes. The chief lifted his staff and spoke again. "By our law, a savior is given a life bond," he said. "This is our gift, our promise, and our chain." The crowd cheered again, but Jack's heart sank. The meaning was clear even without words. They were giving him a wife. The girl stepped closer, her voice soft but steady. "I am chosen," she said in broken human speech. Her accent was heavy, but the words were clear enough. "I will be yours." Jack's jaw tightened, his mind racing. This was madness. He had saved them, yes, but marriage. But a bond? He had never asked for this. He looked at the chief, hoping it was some kind of mistake. But the chief's eyes held only certainty. "To protect us is to be one of us," the chief said firmly. "You cannot walk alone now, guardian." "Not here," the tribe shouted with joy, clapping, cheering, chanting. But Jack felt trapped. He looked at the girl, so small, so fragile, yet standing with pride. She was no child, he realized, though her size made it hard to see. She had the look of someone who had suffered, someone who had chosen to be brave. Her eyes met his, and in them he saw no fear, only determination. To her, This was not a burden, but an honor. Jack tried to speak, his voice rough. I cannot. This is not my way. The tribe grew silent, the air heavy. The chief frowned, his staff tapping against the stone. Our way, he said, is now your way. Jack's heart pounded, his mind spinning. He wanted to shout, to refuse, to walk away. But the tribe's eyes held him in place. They were not forcing him with weapons, but with hope. They had given him trust, loyalty, even love. To reject their gift would be to crush that hope. The girl raised the crown of leaves and placed it gently on his arm. Her hands shook, but her face was calm. This is bond, she whispered. Jack closed his eyes, feeling the weight of it, not just the crown, but the responsibility it carried. He was no longer just a protector. He was tied to them, to her, to this strange new family. The tribe erupted into cheers. The drums thundered, children danced, elders wept, the night alive with joy. Jack stood still, his mind heavy with questions. Was this fate? Or a trap dressed as tradition? Had he been saved by chance only to be chained by custom? The chief raised his staff one final time. Our guardian is bound, he shouted. The tribe roared in answer. Jack looked down at the girl beside him. Her hand rested lightly against his. Her eyes shining with pride, he felt a strange pull in his chest. Not love, not yet, but something deep and dangerous. Something that told him his life would never be the same. Far above, the stars glimmered, and in the distance, a shadow moved among the cliffs. The raiders were not gone. They were watching, waiting, planning. And now, Jack had more to lose than ever before. The night after the binding felt different. The tribe sang songs until the lanterns burned low. Children danced around the fires. Elders told stories of old guardians. And in the middle of it all stood Jack, with the small silver-haired girl by his side. She was no longer just one of them. She was now his bond, his mini-wife. The thought made his chest heavy, his mind tangled in doubt. Her name was Lyra. She spoke little, but when she did, her words were careful and strong. She walked beside Jack with small, quick steps. Her eyes never left him, as if she was both proud and afraid. Jack wanted to tell her that he had never asked for this, that he did not understand their customs. But when he looked into her glowing eyes, the words would not come. Instead, he only nodded when she offered food. He only listened when she whispered. About her people, the tribe watched them closely. Everywhere they went, eyes followed. Some smiled with joy. Others whispered in doubt. Some believed this bond would save them. Others feared it would destroy them. Jack felt the weight of those stares. He was a soldier, not a husband. But now, in their eyes, he was both. Days passed. Slowly, Lyra stayed close, guiding him through the tribe's ways. She showed him how they grew their food in small glowing gardens, how they gathered water from the silver streams that cut through the cliffs. She taught him their greetings, their prayers, even their songs. Her voice was soft like the sound of the streams at night. Jack listened, though many words slipped past his understanding. Still, he tried, because he saw how much it meant to. Her one evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Lyra led Jack to a hidden cave. Inside, walls shimmered with crystals, glowing in colors he had never seen. She touched the stones and said, "Our heart." Jack realized this was the tribe's secret, their power. The raiders must have been after this. He asked why they showed him an outsider. Lyra only looked at him and said, "You are not outsider now." Her words struck deep, not outsider. For years, Jack had been drifting, fighting wars far from home. He had been a soldier without a family, a man without a place. But here, in this strange world, a people smaller than him trusted him completely. It was both comforting and terrifying, because now if he failed, it would not just be his own life at risk. It would be hers and theirs. The peace did not last. One night, while the tribe slept, Jack heard whispers. He followed the sound through the stone bridges, and in the shadows, he saw two figures meeting in secret. One of them wore raider armor, hidden beneath a cloak. The other was a villager. Jack's heart sank. A traitor among them. The raider handed the villager a small crystal. The villager nodded and whispered something about the guardian. Jack's name. Then they parted, disappearing into the night. Jack stepped back, his fists tight. He wanted to stop them. But he was only one man. And without proof, the chief might not believe him. Still, the truth burned in his mind. Someone inside the tribe was helping the raiders. Someone was preparing to destroy them from within. The next morning, Jack told Lyra what he had seen. Her eyes widened, but she did not doubt him. Instead, she took his hand in her small fingers and whispered, "You must tell, Chief. But be careful. Many do not trust you yet." Her voice trembled, but her grip was firm. She was braver than she looked, and Jack realized that this bond, strange as it was, had already begun to matter. She was not just tied to him by law, she had chosen to stand with him. Later that day, the chief gathered the tribe. He announced that the raiders were not finished, that they were gathering strength for a final attack. The tribe gasped, fear spreading like fire. But then the chief lifted his staff and pointed at Jack. "Our guardian will stand with us," he declared. The people cheered. But Jack saw fear. In their eyes, they believed in him, but belief was fragile. One mistake and their hope would shatter. That night, as Jack prepared his few weapons, Lyra sat beside him. She did not speak, only hummed a soft tune, a song of her people filled with sorrow and hope. Jack closed his eyes, listening. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of silence lifted, not by victory, not by strength, but by the presence of someone who believed in him. But shadows moved outside the cave. The traitor was still out there waiting, and beyond the cliffs the raiders sharpened their blades, the tribe celebrated their guardian. But danger was crawling closer every second. Jack gripped his broken baton, his heart heavy with fear, for now he was not fighting only for survival. He was fighting for a bond he had never expected, and for a people who had made him one of their own. The days after the binding ceremony passed with heavy silence. The tribe tried to return to normal life, but whispers never stopped. Everywhere Jack went, he heard voices speaking his name. Some called him guardian with pride. Others spoke with fear. And in those whispers, one truth grew clear. Not everyone wanted him there. Lyra stayed close, guiding him, watching him. Her small hand often tugged at his arm, pulling him away from angry stares. She told him to ignore the doubts, but Jack could not. He had lived through wars, and he knew that distrust was as dangerous as blades. At night, the warning drums beat faintly in the distance. Scouts had seen the raiders gathering again. Soon there would be another attack, larger than before. The chief called for meetings, planning defenses. He spoke of traps, of weapons, of courage. But Jack's thoughts always returned to the shadows, to the secret meeting he had seen, to the villager who had taken a crystal. From the raiders, he tried to warn the chief, but his words were met with doubt. "Your eyes are strong, guardian," the chief said, "but you do not yet know our people." Jack clenched his fists, but said nothing more. If the chief would not believe, then Jack would find proof on his own. That proof came sooner than he expected. One night, as the tribe feasted, Jack felt his stomach twist. The food tasted strange, bitter. Lyra noticed first, her glowing eyes narrowing as she sniffed the meat. Without warning, she slapped the bowl. From his hands, it shattered on the stone floor, and gasps filled the air. The crowd murmured in shock, some accusing her of disrespect. But Jack's heart pounded. She had saved him. The food was poisoned. The chief rose from his seat, his staff striking the ground. "Who dares bring poison to our guardian?" he thundered. Silence swept through the gathering. But Jack's eyes searched the crowd, and there in the corner, he saw the same villager from the night of the secret meeting. Sweat beaded on the man's face, his eyes darting like a trapped animal. Jack stepped forward, pointing at him. "It was him," he growled, his voice echoing across the caves. The villager shook his head, backing away. "No," he cried. "It was not me." But his hands trembled, his guilt plain. The tribe erupted in shouts, some demanding his punishment, others demanding proof. The chief frowned, torn between justice and doubt. The villager made his choice with a sudden movement. He grabbed a hidden blade and lunged at Jack. The crowd screamed. Jack moved fast, catching the man's wrist and twisting it until the blade clattered to the ground. He shoved the traitor down, pinning him to the stone. The chief's guards rushed forward, seizing the villager. The chief's face turned dark with anger. "You have betrayed us," he said coldly. The villager spat, his voice full of venom. "The raiders are strong. The guardian will bring only death to us. Better to side with power than with a doomed giant." The words cut deep into the tribe. Some gasped, others looked at Jack with fear. Was he really a savior, or would he lead them to ruin? Jack felt the weight of every eye. He wanted to shout, to promise victory, but promises meant little in war. Only action could decide. The chief raised his staff. "Take him away," he ordered. The guards dragged the traitor into the shadows, his curses echoing long after he was gone. The feast ended in silence, fear and doubt thick in the air. That night Jack sat alone, sharpening his knife. Lyra sat beside him, her small hands folded in her lap. "You see now," she whispered. "Not all want you here." Jack nodded, his jaw tight. "I know," he said, "but I will not leave. Not while you and your people still need me." Her eyes softened, her hand resting on his. "You fight for us," she said, "and I fight for you." The words warmed him, but outside the night grew colder. Scouts returned with grim news. The raiders were moving, their army larger than ever. They carried torches that burned across the horizon like rivers of fire. They were coming, not tomorrow, not in a week, but now. The chief called the tribe together. "The final storm is here," he said. "We must stand, or we will fall." The people trembled, but their eyes turned once again to Jack. He stood tall. Though his body ached and his weapon was weak, he had no army, no fortress, no machines of war. Only his strength, his courage, and the trust of those who believed in him. And beside him stood Lyra, her silver hair glowing in the firelight. She raised her voice, small but steady. "He is our guardian. He will not fall, and neither will we." The tribe shouted in answer, their fear turning into fire. For the first time, they looked at Jack not only with doubt, but with faith. Still in the shadows, doubt whispered. The traitor's words lingered like poison, and Jack knew the next battle would decide everything. Not only the future of the tribe, but the truth of his bond. And as the drums of war thundered in the distance, he tightened his grip on his blade. For the storm was coming, and he was ready to meet it. The night of the storm had come. The cliffs shook with the sound of drums. Far across the horizon, fires burned like rivers of red. The raiders were marching, their war cries echoing through the dark. The tribe gathered in silence, their glowing eyes wide with fear. Mothers clutched children, elders whispered prayers, and in the center stood Jack, the human guardian, tall against the night. He had little left. His baton was broken, its power gone. Only his knife, his fists, and his will remained, but sometimes will was the sharpest weapon of all. Beside him stood Lyra, silver hair glowing like starlight. She refused to leave his side, though he had begged her to hide. "You fight," she said, her voice steady. "Then I fight too." Jack had no answer. Her courage was small in size, but vast in strength. The chief raised his staff, its crystal humming with ancient power. He spoke words of fire, calling his people to stand. The tribe armed themselves with spears, stones, and fire jars, simple weapons, yet carried with desperate hope. Jack walked among them, his tall figure casting shadows. He touched shoulders, nodded to faces filled with fear. "Stand strong," he said, his voice low but clear. "They are many, but we are not weak." Then the ground trembled. The raiders had arrived. An army of armored giants poured across the bridges. Their torches lit the sky in red. Their blades gleamed with bloodlust. They laughed, shouting curses at the tiny tribe. To them, it was not a battle, but a slaughter. But Jack stepped forward, standing at the front. The wind whipped his hair. The firelight burned in his eyes. He raised his knife, his voice booming across the cliffs. "You want them?" he roared. "You go through me first." The raiders howled with rage and charged. The battle exploded. Spears clashed against metal, fire jars shattered, lighting the night with flames. The tribe fought with all they had, throwing stones, striking. With desperate hands, Jack was a storm in the middle of it all. He slammed raiders to the ground, struck with fists that broke bone. Every swing of his knife cut deep. But for every raider he struck down, 2 more came. Lyra fought beside him, small but fierce. She darted between legs, throwing fire jars at their feet. Explosions sent raiders stumbling, their armor smoking. Once a raider raised a blade to strike her. Jack roared, his knife flashing. He cut the raider down before the blade could fall. "Stay close," he shouted. She nodded, her eyes blazing with fire. Still, the tide pressed harder. The tribe's defenses broke. Warriors fell. The raiders pushed closer to the heart of the village. Jack's body burned with pain. Cuts lined his arms. Blood dripped down his face. Yet he did not stop. Every scream, every cry behind him drove him forward. He was not only fighting for himself now, he was fighting for Lyra, for the chief, for every soul who believed in him. Then the raider warlord appeared, a towering figure in black iron armor, his face hidden by a skull mask. He carried a massive blade, glowing red with heat. His voice thundered like stone breaking. "Human," he growled, "your end is here." Jack stepped forward, chest heaving. He had nothing left but his knife and his rage. Still, he faced the warlord without fear. "You'll have to kill me first," he said, his voice steady. The warlord roared and swung his blade. The ground split where it struck, sparks flying. Jack dodged, rolled, struck back with his knife. The blade scraped against armor, leaving only a shallow cut. The fight raged. The warlord's strength was monstrous, each swing a storm. Jack's body screamed with pain, but he refused to fall. He struck again and again, every move fueled by fire in his chest. The tribe watched, their hope hanging on his every strike. Lyra's voice rose above the chaos. "Guardian, fight," she cried. "You are not alone." Her words gave him strength. Jack feinted, lured the warlord into a wide swing. The giant's blade smashed. Into the stone, stuck for a breath of time, Jack seized the chance. He leapt forward, driving his knife into the warlord's chest. Sparks and blood erupted as the giant howled. Jack twisted the blade with all his strength, and with a final roar, the warlord fell, crashing to the ground like a broken mountain. Silence spread across the battlefield. The raiders froze, their leader fallen, their courage shattered. One by one they turned and fled, their torches vanishing into the night. The tribe's cries of fear turned into roars of victory. Drums thundered, voices rose. The guardian had stood, and the tribe had survived. Jack fell to one knee, his chest burning, his breath ragged. Blood dripped from his wounds, his knife heavy in his hand. Lyra rushed to him, her small arms wrapping around his shoulder. "You did it," she whispered, her voice trembling with joy. Jack looked at her, his vision blurred. "No," he said softly. "We did it." The chief raised his staff, his voice shaking with pride. "The guardian has saved us," he shouted. "Our bond is strong, our tribe still lives." The people cheered, their voices echoing through the cliffs. Jack tried to rise, but his body gave way. Darkness closed in, heavy and cold. The last thing he felt was Lyra's hand, holding his, and her voice steady and fierce. "You are not alone, not ever again." The battlefield was silent at last. Smoke drifted across the stone bridges, mixing with the smell of blood and fire. The raiders had fled, their torches vanished into the distance. Only the tribe remained, standing among the ruins of their homes, but their voices were not broken. Cries. They were songs of victory, chants of survival. And at the center of it all lay Jack, the human guardian, unconscious and still. Lyra knelt beside him, her small hands pressed against his wounds. Her silver hair fell across his chest as she whispered prayers. "Stay," she begged, softly. "Do not leave." Her voice cracked, but she refused to cry. She knew he was more than flesh and blood now. He was their shield, their hope, their bond. The chief stood nearby, his staff glowing faintly. He closed his eyes and pressed the crystal to Jack's body. Energy hummed through the air, warm and bright. The wounds slowed their bleeding, though his strength did not return. "He lives," the chief said, "but his spirit walks the edge." The tribe bowed their heads in relief, for their guardian had not fallen, not yet. They carried him to the crystal cave, the heart of their people. Lanterns flickered. Shadows danced across the glowing walls. They laid him on a bed of woven leaves. Lyra stayed at his side, refusing food, refusing rest. She held his hand every moment, sometimes whispering songs, sometimes only sitting in silence. Her presence was his anchor. Even in his dreams, Jack felt her close. Days passed, Jack's body healed slowly, scars marking his skin. But when his eyes finally opened, the first thing he saw was Lyra's smile. "You came back," she said, softly. Tears glimmering in her eyes, Jack tried to speak, but his voice was weak. Instead, he only squeezed her hand. That was enough. The tribe gathered when they heard the news. They filled the crystal cave, their glowing eyes fixed on the human. The chief raised his staff and spoke. "Our guardian lives," he declared. "The raiders are broken, their warlord slain, and our people free." The cave shook with cheers, voices echoing like thunder. Jack sat up slowly, still weak but steady. He looked at the faces around him. They were no longer afraid, no longer doubtful. They looked at him with pure faith. That night a great feast was held. Fires burned high, drums thundered, and the tribe danced. They sang songs not of sorrow, but of triumph. Songs of the tall warrior who had come from the sky, songs of the guardian who had stood against an army. Jack listened, humbled. He had never wanted glory, never wanted titles. But he could not deny the truth. In their hearts, he was no longer an outsider. He was theirs. Lyra sat close, her eyes shining with pride. "You are legend now," she whispered, her small hand resting on his arm. Jack shook his head with a tired smile. "No," he said. "I am only a man." But deep inside, he felt the weight of her words. A man he might be, but legends were born from men who chose to stand. The days that followed were filled with rebuilding. The tribe repaired their bridges, carved new homes in the cliffs. Jack worked alongside them, carrying stone, lifting beams. His tall frame made tasks easier, his strength a gift to their fragile hands. Children followed him laughing, calling him guardian. Elders blessed him, and warriors sought his training. Slowly, the tribe grew stronger, not only because of him, but because he had taught them to believe in themselves. Yet danger was never truly gone. Scouts reported that some raiders still roamed the far cliffs. They whispered of new leaders rising, seeking revenge. The chief warned that peace would not last forever, but the tribe no longer trembled. They had faced the storm and survived, and they knew as long as their guardian stood with them, they would face whatever came. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in gold, Jack and Lyra stood at the edge of the cliffs. The wind tugged at their hair, carrying the scent of fire and stone. "You regret this bond?" she asked quietly, her eyes searching his. Jack looked down at her, at the small figure who had stood beside him in battle, at the one who had saved his life more than once, and for the first time he spoke without hesitation. "No," he said, his voice firm. "I do not regret it." Her smile was soft, but it reached her glowing eyes. In that moment, Jack realized something he had never expected. In fighting for them, he had found something worth more than victory. He had found family. As night fell, the drums echoed once more. The tribe gathered to honor their guardian. They carved his image into the stone walls, tall and unyielding. They sang of the day the sky sent a warrior, a man who became more than a protector, a man who became legend, and far above, the stars glittered, silent witnesses to the bond between human and alien, a bond forged in fire, sharpened in battle, sealed in trust. The story of the Guardian was only beginning, for though the raiders were broken, the galaxy was vast, and new storms would surely rise. But Jack was ready. For he was no longer a man walking alone. He was guardian, husband, family, and legend,